Hi, thank you, audience. It's not every day that we get a chance to meet biological oceanographer. Please welcome Dr. Joachim Goes. Welcome to our studio and thank you for your time with us.
I would like to thank Harold for giving me this opportunity to speak to our audiences here in Goa as well as the rest of the world, where we have a huge Goan diaspora. So
Yes.
thank you very much.
Yes. A little bit about Professor Goes, and now he did his master's from Bombay University. Then you have a PhD from Nagoya University. You are from Kortali and came from East Africa.
Yes, from
and-
Kenya.
From
yes.
Kenya, and now you are a professor at Columbia Climate School. What a journey that is!
Yeah, it has been a journey because I've been to several places as part of my work as well. So it has been a tremendously exciting journey, and I think in Goa, especially the young kids are not aware of the opportunities. We sometimes focus on narrow fields, but there are tremendous opportunities in various fields that we do not take advantage of, and we have so many smart kids in Goa, in India.
True,
Yeah.
true. And your special focus area of studies is to read about the plankton ecosystems and the carbon cycling of the water
Yes.
ocean. Please
So-
tell me more about that. your
So
area.
my research focuses on how climate change is affecting our ocean ecosystems. Okay, and it starts from the base of the food chain and how it affects fisheries, so our food security. We also focus on how much carbon dioxide is being built up in our atmosphere.
Okay.
The ocean takes up about 50% of that.
Soaks it.
Yeah, it sequesters it
Okay.
into,
Okay.
and most of the process by which it is sequestered into the oceans is plankton. So there's a huge connection. So every breath that we take, 50% of it is from the plankton in the ocean, phytoplanktons. So you can imagine they contribute as much as plants on land to our oxygen in the atmosphere. So we should be grateful to these tiny little microscopic organisms that actually give us our oxygen and our
Right.
food as well.
Yes. So tell me about this the new research that you've been doing about in Arabian Sea with the onset of monsoon, and you were you were looking into the climate change and the duration of the onset of monsoon and how it affects our biodiversity. This is what you did last.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, although I left India, I used to work at the National Institute of Oceanography. That's where I started my career in oceanography. But I've never lost that love for coming to the Arabian Sea because it's a tremendously interesting place in the world's oceans. And about a third of the world's population depends on the Arabian Sea for the monsoons that we get, for the fisheries, and it's a gateway to the Middle East where all our energy comes from. So it is geopolitically very, very important as well. But this study that we did this time was funded by the Ministry of Earth Sciences in New Delhi, the government of India, and on the US side it was funded by the Office of Naval Research,
Okay.
and our work was funded by NASA. So the focus of the study was looking at how this warming that the Arabian Sea is experiencing, it is now warmer by about 2 degrees centigrade. Okay.
Okay.
So this warming of the ocean surface affects how the moisture formation happens,
True.
and it also affects how
Ocean winds.
ocean winds that bring the monsoon to
Yes.
our coastline. And that was a fine balance until maybe about 10 years ago. That has changed now, in the sense that you're seeing this manifest in the form of cyclones, because the Arabian Sea is getting warmer. It's becoming a low pressure area before the monsoon starts. And typically going forward, I think that the Arabian Sea, as it becomes warmer and warmer, we'll see more and more cyclones. And cyclonic damages are huge.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, storm surges can result in erosion of coastlines, loss of property, infrastructure, even
Of course,
ports.
human lives. Yeah.
And so one of the things that has happened is that the Ministry of Earth Sciences, which controls various labs like IMD, Indian Meteorological Department,
Yes.
the long range weather forecasting, the short range weather forecasting, we need to get this, how these parameters have changed, because it's important for modeling and forecasting purposes.
And those parameters should be also in the policies, you know, the new policies that will come up to take a measure, to take a preventive measurement.
Absolutely. So if you cannot predict the monsoon accurately, it has a huge impact on our economy.
True, true.
Our economy is an agricultural economy, and several countries around the region. So even a 10-day delay in the monsoons will cause a rise in prices. And I'm not sure whether you've seen this time, but we had a 20-day delay.
And it create effects in our national stock exchange also. Like
Absolutely. Because people are worried about the food production, how it will affect rice crops. Because we have lived through a period where we know exactly when to plant, when to transplant, and when to harvest. That entire cycle is being disrupted now. So it is a tremendous pressure on our food security as well. And also water. Erratic monsoons result in floods, loss of property, and there's also a loss of water that happens with a flood. Rainfall in some ways is, when it is not extreme, can be, very, very good, but when it's very extreme, you have floods happening.
Yes, true.
And the cyclone is an example of what can happen as we move forward.
Now, talking about cyclones, and I read about how that research ship was chasing cyclone Biparjoy recently.
Yes.
I would like to know a little bit of that, about the ship and the kind of equipments that you were using. I have heard a term like ocean gliders. What are they?
Okay.
Or your experiences of chasing the Biparjoy, and any result that you could say?
So yes, we didn't expect the cyclone to happen during this, and this cruise was called Ekam Sat, which means that there's only one truth. It's derived from Sanskrit, but it has got it's an acronym for something that's more intense. It's also scientific understanding, improving our scientific understanding and training of the next generation of scientists. The cruise took place on a US research vessel, which came all the way from South Africa to Goa. And we had about 30 scientists on board, about 16 from India, and about 14 from the US. And within that contingent, we had about 50% for students. So it's really an effort to train the next generation of scientists. And if you spoke to anyone on board, even the kids, the youngest people, they knew more about the monsoons than we will ever know. That is the level of intensity of how people were, were interested in the monsoons. So the cruise, when it took place, this cyclone was passing. And the ship schedule cannot be changed. We were allotted 21 days, and it was supposed to be followed by an Indian ship that was coming all the way from the Bay of Bengal around Sri Lanka. So we left when the cyclone was passing, and that was a tremendous experience, especially for the first timers.
Of course.
There were a lot of sick people on board, so with the cyclone, there was so much of moisture that was taken away from the Arabian Sea. Instead of coming to Kerala, Goa, Mangalore, and all the west coast, it was just carried away to a different location. And it landed in Gujarat, and in Pakistan we had it in floods in Karachi as well. And the size of that cyclone, the cloud mass that developed, was actually the width of India. So you can,
that big?
Yeah, from the International Space Station we could see images coming
Okay.
of the size of the cyclone, and it was a very slow moving cyclone, so it was gathering more and more moisture as it moved forward. It stalled off the coast of Goa, and at one point we were thinking that it might make a right angle
Landfall,
turn
yeah.
and come hit towards Goa, Mangalore and Mumbai. But fortunately for us, it moved up northwards and then it landed in Gujarat. Not South Gujarat, but North Gujarat. What it did, it disrupted our experiment.
True.
Yeah, so we were interested in finding out what are the triggers of this monsoon. So you study how much of moisture is formed, how the oceans and the atmosphere interact, and there are some key variables that we have to measure
Right.
as inputs into our forecasting models. So that entire process of collecting the data, that crucial data, was disrupted.
Those markers were gone with the monsoon, with the moisture that Biparjoy took it away.
Yeah, and Biparjoy also cooled the surface, so it brought water as it went. Water from the deep came up.
Okay.
And that cooled the surface. So for the moisture to form, it had to reheat, and
Got
then the
it.
moisture had to build up. So that's why we saw a big delay in the monsoons. But this is a good learning exercise for us as well, because we forecast in the future, long-term forecast is that the Arabian Sea will experience more cyclones, and what kind of impacts it would have on our monsoon cycle. Right. This one told us that if there is a cyclone before the monsoon, and that is because the Arabian Sea is excessively warm, we will have delays in the monsoon. Yeah.
So it's a great finding.
Yeah, it is a great finding, but it was unexpected. But so this cruise is, it's a long-term process. So this was a pilot cruise.
Okay. Okay.
So we wanted to test our instrumentation, and most of the instrumentation that is being used is state-of-the-art. Some of
Yeah.
it has never been tested as well. So you mentioned the gliders.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
The gliders, you just drop it from the side of the ship, and it can be controlled even from a Starbucks restaurant.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so it's all computer controlled. It is connected to Iridium sensors on both satellites, and so you can control where it can go. So if you see an interesting feature from space, from the
Okay,
satellites,
okay.
you can direct the glider towards. So typically what they measure is two important variables. One is temperature and salinity,
Okay.
and that tells you where the water mass is coming. They also have current meters to tell you which side the currents are coming from. And then over the atmosphere, we were sending up balloons to find out how much moisture is building up.
Up there.
Yeah, yes. So what was happening is that there was moisture being built up, but there were warm winds that were
Okay.
filling up the void
Okay.
from the surface,
Okay.
so that those warm winds were coming from the desert. And so as this moisture was developing, instead of coming in contact with cold air and forming clouds,
Yes.
it was being evaporated. It was
Okay.
forming droplets in the sea itself. We didn't see those droplets, but that is the process by which it formed. Next year when we come, it's going to be even more intense in the sense there'll be much more instrumentation.
Okay.
So we drop floats in the water, we drop so many things. They are autonomous,
Okay.
and because they can send their data
Okay.
autonomously through the satellite down to a ground station.
Right.
So you can get the data within a matter of minutes after you launch an instrument.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are some still out,
Yeah, I'm sure.
and they're
yeah.
sending in data. So
Which will only help you gather more
More
knowledge
data.
about the ocean.
yeah, because the ships to run a ship is very, very costly. Like
Yes.
for instance, just to give you an approximate figure, this ship one day's operation is close to about $80,000. That's a lot of
huge.
amount
Yes.
of money. So
Yeah.
you multiply that by about 20 days. It's
It's huge. Yeah.
yeah. So these autonomous things, you don't have to control them.
Yeah. And because of the huge expenses, that is why you need to collaborate with so many agencies, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than having one agency.
Yeah, and there are so many institutes within India that collaborate with US institutes.
True.
And now with this power of communication, people collaborate online.
They do,
So
yeah.
during the cruise, people were sending in suggestions
Mhm.
and letting us know how we could improve some kind of measurements. where we should go, and so forth.
Got it. So tell us about that impact your studies have, or the impact on the fishing community of Goa. That is what I wanted to know. Like, does it make any impact at all? Or
Absolutely, that's
Okay.
a good question actually. So before the monsoons set in, the Arabian Sea is like a desert. It warms up.
Yes.
Okay, there
Yeah.
are no nutrients in the surface. It
Okay.
becomes a layered, tiered structure, and so you have nothing growing in the water.
So if I can interject, so then the fishermen go for deep sea fishing when these things happen, because
Typically on the coast, you should be able to see some fish
Okay.
because we have a lot of nutrients that are generated in shallow waters. But offshore, we have a
Okay.
tremendous problem where the nutrients are not there, and you have, instead of a organism that will support, say for instance, mackerels or sardines, they are not there in the water. You have an organism that is cyanobacteria that can use atmospheric nitrogen
okay,
to grow,
okay,
and those kind of organisms actually support tuna.
okay,
So if you go off the coast of Lakshadweep, it's
Okay.
a huge tuna fishery area, even Maldives for instance, because they're in blue waters, they have cyanobacteria, they have a lot of tuna. If you come closer to the coast, you see some other kind of fish. So what happens during the monsoon is that these waters are churned, and they
Yes.
bring up nutrients to the surface, and then you have these diatoms, which are really important because they have polyunsaturated fatty acids, and they allow this fish larvae to start growing.
okay.
So
It's like a make
sardine-
a surface for the
Yeah.
fish larvae to grow.
So they grow into little adults, they come closer to the coast, and then you have this huge catch of sardines, mackerels, kingfish that we see along the coast. So what will happen moving into the future? This is just a hypothesis,
Yes.
and we do not have enough information right now. What I think, if the period of warming continues and our monsoons are delayed, that churning of the water will also be delayed. Okay.
Okay.
And that will be cause a delay in the supply or availability of
The
that
regular
fish.
supply chain will be affected. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But this is just a hypothesis. We do not have any data to. It's just based on what we know about how the food chain operates. We can tell. I also studied the northeast monsoon, the winter monsoons, where the wind comes from the reverse direction.
Okay. From
Come-
Himalayas.
Yeah, yeah. During that period, you have the cold, dry air coming to the
Yes.
over the Arabian Sea.
Yes.
And that cold, dry air actually makes the surface of the ocean colder, and the colder water becomes denser, it sinks down, and the bottom water comes up. So during that period, you should see also increase in fisheries. What has been happening is that the Himalayan mountain caps are shrinking.
Right.
The air coming out from the mountains is no longer as cold as it was before.
Okay.
It's not as dry, it's more humid. And so this process of winter convective mixing has also shifted. And it has given rise to an organism that we have never seen before 2000. And that organism, unfortunately, is not consumed by any other typical food chain organisms. It's consumed by jellyfish
Okay.
and an organism called salps. And that jellyfish and salps give rise to squid, and turtles, of course, feed on them.
Okay.
So it is disrupting the food chain in a big way, and its manifestations can be seen in the Middle East, like Oman,
Okay.
where they have huge swarms of jellyfish and salps. It hasn't progressed to the Indian coast as yet, but I think that is the direction we are going in. We are altering the food chain as well.
This looks like a major red flag, Professor. What?
Yeah, I think this thing happened since 1998. We started seeing the drop in snow cover extent. And we have lost about 250,000 square kilometers of surface area of snow over the Himalayan mountains. Just to give you some perspective, it's about 30 times the size of Goa that we have lost, about 8 times the size of Kerala.
Wow.
And that has a huge impact on our monsoons because the snow, the amount of snow controls the cycle of the monsoons as well.
True. And before the interview when we were talking, you were also saying that we are not taking climate change seriously.
I do feel You know, our development, India is progressing really fast, and we've seen changes in Goa as well. You see huge highways, roads, which is really all good. I think we should factor in the climatic aspects of it. You saw coastlines all over South Goa and some parts of North Goa being eroded because the sea level is rising at a rapid rate, and that's because the Arabian Sea is landlocked to the north. So you have waters piling up, and it's building up, and so we are losing a lot of coastline. The other thing that has been happening is that you might have noticed that we have severe water shortage problems in Goa. That can be avoided.
Yeah.
That really can be avoided.
Yes,
You
tell
can
us
see-
some ways to prevent.
Yes, so one of the things that I really hope, because I see so much of this water going back into the sea without being harvested. So my feeling is that, you know, just as we are offering incentives for solar energy and green technologies, we should offer incentives for water harvesting as well. Yeah, you know, the real estate market should, you know, be forced or compelled or incentivized to dig wells or, you know, develop water harvesting technologies so that they don't depend on government water supply for the.
Yeah, because the amount of rainfall we have, like
tremendous.
we should be able to like.
We should be
yeah,
self-sufficient,
Yeah, we should be
unlike the Middle
self-sufficient.
East, which
Yes.
has severe problems. So one of the things in the past, we had lots of water bodies all around Goa.
Yes, we
Every
had.
village you went, you
Springs
saw, springs and then lakes. And those, the government should spend money and try to
To
desilt it.
restore,
Distilled them, and they could be used not only for water but for recreation, for agriculture, and so it's a crime that we are wasting that amount of
True,
water.
True.
And you go to some of the villages, they receive water only for 1 or 2 hours,
Yes.
and yet we have so much of water. How
There-
do we balance this?
There may be a 1 kilometer line of water tankers in Karaswada.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like that. Okay, I think we're coming to an end for this conversation. It's great talking to you, Professor Goes. And lastly, I want to hear about your experiences of Kortali then and now that you have seen the whole world. You know, how do you see it? Some changes?
Yeah, the first change that I saw when I went to my village is that my school, which was just a middle to high school, now has a college. It has got a women's college, it has got a teachers college, and it has also got a science college, which makes me tremendously happy that we are actually expanding. The biggest change that I saw in my village is that we used to walk over a road and always worry whilst crossing the road of being mowed down by a truck or a car, but now we have a beautiful highway going all over. It's amazing to see that change that has happened, but I do see a lot of unplanned construction going on. And I think we should be really serious about concretizing our channels that we have. Instead of putting concrete, there should be some porous material that can be used to conserve water, our water table.
Thank you for your time. And
Thank
we
you.
should
Thank you
add-
so much. It brings me great pleasure to come home every
Yes.
time. And I'm coming after 4 years. And within these 4 years, the changes that I've seen are so tremendous. You can come from the airport to Panjim within 30 minutes.
Yes.
It was never possible before.
Yes.
About 5 years, you take about 2 hours in traffic. Now it is so easy.
Yes.
So there has been tremendous progress in Goa. Infrastructure is improving, but we should be mindful that we are in a phase where climate change is happening really rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for your time, and from all of us, best wishes for your next expedition.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
and we look forward to sharing some
Yes,
interesting
of
results
course.
with you as
Yes,
well.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, audience. We'll see you next week.